Hey there, my name is AJ Pickett and I make videos about role-playing games, and lots of them. I upload twice a week with a live stream every weekend. You can find me on Subscribestar, Patreon and Discord, Facebook and Twitter. Also, there is an option to join the channel as a member, and I welcome any questions you have in the comments section below. If you like this video or this channel, hit the like button if you would be so kind. Today we are going to go deep into the swamps and nasty jungles, the dank and flooded dungeons and lost weird sites where things have slithered out of crash-landed contraptions, or innocent marsh-living creatures have bathed in unholy, unnatural oozes and mutated beyond nightmarish proportions. It's time to settle back, grab yourself a beverage. We're going to get deeply nerdy as we investigate the Froghemoth. This classic and oddball monster has its origin in the infamous adventure module for 1st edition Dungeons & Dragons named Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, published in 1980, written by Gary Gygax himself. First experienced by players at the Second Origins convention in 1976, well before it was released as a module. Its original intention was to introduce players of Dungeons & Dragons to the very science fiction themed game called Metamorphosis Alpha, which later became developed into the setting called Gamma World. Essentially, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is an exploration of a crash-landed spaceship, and it has been very popular ever since people first laid eyes on it. Dragon magazine ranked it as the 5th best D&D adventure of all time back in 2004, and it's actually the 3rd in a series of adventures called the S series. Anyway, although it was part of the original Greyhawk setting, as a crash-landed alien spaceship, you can place the adventure on any game world you like. It's extremely easy. So it has seen the most famous creatures introduced into the adventure converted into a number of different publications. Goodman Games has the most faithful update of the original content, and those who have read the adventure Lost Laboratory of Qualish for 5th edition will see a lot of links to the original adventure, as it's also intended to be set in the Barrier Peaks for the Greyhawk setting. In the spaceship, there are a number of main sections, and the Froghemoth shows up in a pond within the gardens and menagerie part of the spaceship. There are a number of critters which look like something else and then leap up and grab the characters. Also, quite a few classic plant monsters and a lot of variations on Earth-like animals with oid added to the end of the name, and usually something freaky about them. So the monkeyoids have 3 arms, that sort of thing. The big bad monster in the pond, with a short bridge crossing over to a central island, is the Froghemoth, and this is what we are told about it in the original text. Whether this is a mutated thing or the adult form of some specimen loosed from captivity, it is unquestionably the most fearsome of all the terrible life forms on level 4. The Froghemoth's 18-foot long, 10-foot wide body is yellow-orange on the belly, shading to a medium green on its back and thick, bowed rear legs. From its shoulder area sprout 4 tentacles, 2 from each shoulder, which are green on top and yellowish underneath. The creature's nostrils are stalk-like, and its 3 eyes are housed on a retractable protruding appendage, which is withdrawn when danger threatens the optics. The Froghemoth will submerge its body several feet beneath the water, trailing its tentacles ashore, and watch with its eye appendages at water level. This, along with the nostril stalks, appears to be a plant-like growth of some sort. The frog thing is also able to capture prey with its long barbed tongue. This member can be flicked out to a distance of 10 feet originally. Unless the creature caught by the tongue is able to hold fast to something quickly, such as a tree, a rope, etc., it will be drawn with every round to the Froghemoth's gaping jaws and torn to shreds. It will swallow prey whole on a 2-hit roll of 19 or 20. If a character is grabbed, the chance to hold onto an object, if any exists to grab, is the roll of the d6, discounting 1 or 2 as a surprised and unable to hold on to anything victim, compared to the roll of a d8 for the monster. If the monster's roll is higher, the character is drawn into its mouth, and I should note here, there's no chance for the character if that happens. They get chewed up, quite dead. The tongue is also fearsomely strong, and most non-fighter characters would not have a snowball's chance in hell of breaking free of it, and most fighters would have a strength score lower than that required anyway. However, the tongue can be severed, and the beast is not resistant to ordinary weapon damage, so laying into it with gusto is really the best bet. There's also a note that the Froghemoth will use its tentacles to grab at prey that it is escaping or resisting the pull of its tongue. If the prey breaks free from the Froghemoth, it will instinctively chase it for a few rounds, a potential tactical weakness. The Froghemoth will resist this instinct if the terrain is not its favoured swampy environment though, so they won't chase them into dry areas. Usually. The rest of the text details the treasures that can be found by those searching the lake, which are fairly abundant. So that's it. No details on the ecology, original homeworld, or even if it's a one-off freak mutation or experiment. This is fairly typical of old monster listings. They are just what you see is what you get. Good luck, bold heroes. Have at thee and enjoy the loot. When the Froghemoth was listed outside the adventure as part of the AD&D Monstrous Manual, we do get a little more details, including an ecology for it, and some modification to that deadly character-snatching tongue, and more. This listing states that a Froghemoth lives only in large swamps or in shallow, fresh water, 100 feet or less. It can operate on dry land, but it moves in a series of awkward hops at half speed, slumbering. Once every 9 years, the Froghemoths return to their spawning ground to mate with others of their ilk. Every pair lays 10 to 100 eggs, each about a foot long, in shallow water. The tadpoles are immediately left to fend for themselves by the adults. These are called tadhemoths, which is just awesome. Tadhemoths resemble fish with 4 pectoral fins and 2 tails. For 6 months, the tadhemoths grow about 1 foot per month. Then they slow down to 1 foot of growth every 2 months. At 6 months, the tentacles start to develop from those pectoral fins, and by the 10th month, the legs start to develop from the rear fins. And by the 12th month, the tadhemoth stage has ended. As they grow in their spawning grounds, naturally the tadhemoths feed on each other in opportunistic cannibalism, so that only 10% survive more than a few days after hatching, and only 1 to 4% reach adult size. Barring violent death, the Froghemoths are thought to live up to 100 years. Scholars estimate that the Froghemoth is very likely the dominant predator in its home region. Only very powerful creatures like dragons or well-equipped adventurers can hope to succeed against one. Froghemoth tadpoles cannot be trained, but they may be possible to capture one and move it to some place where it can act as a vicious and somewhat unreliable guard animal. They do have the ability to recover from quite severe injuries. A severed tongue or a tentacle regrows in 2 to 5 weeks. They have a diet that basically includes any other creature that gets anywhere near their lake or pond or mud pool, and of course any fish that grow large enough for them to consider worth the effort of eating. It may be possible for them to go into a state of hibernation, encasing themselves in mucus and mud for extended periods of harsh conditions. These things are the size of an elephant, so they have a prodigious nutritional demand. Okay, so skipping ahead several decades, we have the Froghemoth from Volo's Guide to Monsters for 5th edition, along with some more details on its ecology and an interesting survival trait. Volo says that every few years a Froghemoth can lay a fertile egg without mating. As usual, the Froghemoth cares nothing for its egg and may actually eat the hatchling. A young Froghemoth's survival is most often predicated on its parent leaving it behind in indifference, which is kind of a stupid thing to say, as the adults don't range around a huge hunting area. They stay in the same environment the tadhemoth is growing in. So how about this instead? Maybe tadhemoths can spray a fluid that causes the adult Froghemoth to leave them the hell alone. That works. Also, if the player characters or non-player characters find out about this, they have a potential means to deal with adult Froghemoths in some degree of safety, which builds plots. And I suggest always lean into stuff that can make for good plots. The 5th edition Froghemoth is a fairly faithful representation of the original monster, actually. It has an armor class of 14, with a thick rubbery hide that is resistant to fire and lightning damage. It's also resistant to high-tech blasters and beam weapons, I should add. However, while it only takes half damage from lightning, it does suffer additional ill effects from the shock to its nervous system. Its speed is halved, it takes a -2 penalty to its armor class and dexterity saving throws, and it can't use reactions or multi-attack on its turn. It can use either an action or a bonus action, but not both. All these effects only last until the start of the next turn, but keeping this creature pinned down with, say, the Witch Bolt spell is an extremely good tactic to use against it. Just be sure to stay at the 30-foot maximum range of the spell. If the caster gets within 20 feet, the Froghemoth will absolutely lash out with the full 20-foot reach of its tentacles or tongue. The Froghemoth has between 96 and 272 hit points, with an average of 184. I suggest leaning towards the maximum value, because these creatures are a little bit nerfed with their attack options. It's very hard to sneak up on a Froghemoth. They have a passive perception of 19. Most of the time, they are actively looking out for prey. They stay out of sight with a +5 to their stealth check and add +9 to their active perception rolls. They also have a +5 to the wisdom saving throws, so they have a knack of seeing right through illusions as well. They have 60-foot dark vision, and I would consider their ability to detect any splish splashing in the water around it for quite some distance. They can remain underwater or out of the water for as long as they like. They breathe both air and water, unlike regular amphibians, so they can sit there under the water with their eyes just raised up and not be disturbing it at all. Although they are a challenge rating 10 encounter, they're quite stupid, and combat with them is not very complex. They have an intelligence of 2 and a charisma of 5. However, they are powerful with a strength of 23 and also a +9 on constitution saving throws. They are ambush hunters and attack whatever's closest to them. They make 2 tentacle attacks and 1 bite or tongue attack each round. If you wanted to make it a legendary encounter, throw in some extra tentacle attacks it can make on other creatures' turns during the combat round, and perhaps a water surge attack that has a small chance of knocking medium or smaller creatures that are in the water with it prone for a moment. The tentacles have a reach of 20 feet and are +10 to hit a single target and do 3d8 +6 bludgeoning damage. Plus, the creature will be grappled with an escape difficulty of 16, just automatically. Even huge creatures can be grabbed by the Froghemoth, which is why they can take down creatures as formidable as dinosaurs and young dragons. While it is attacking with 2 tentacles at a time each round, it does have 4 of them, so it can grapple up to 4 creatures at once, in theory, and nab another with its tongue. The tongue has a reach of 20 feet as well, which is quite impressive. But even more impressive is that the 3-eyed Froghemoth never misses its target with that tongue, so no attack roll is required. Instead, the victim must make a DC 18 strength saving throw to rip themselves free of it, and they are ripping themselves away from the barbs. They also have to do this immediately, as otherwise they get pulled into an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the Froghemoth, and the Froghemoth can make a bite attack against it then as a bonus action. So that's a wicked attack. This only works on medium or smaller creatures, which is what the Froghemoth considers a snack. The bite attack is formidable, as you would expect. Any creature within 5 feet of the monster can get a bite, and it is +10 to hit, and the bite does 3d10 +6 piercing damage. Plus, if it's a medium or smaller creature, they are instantly swallowed. No saving throws. See you later. They are now blinded and restrained, have total cover against attacks and other effects outside of the Froghemoth, of course, and they start getting digested by powerful gullet acid that does 3d6 damage at the start of the Froghemoth's next turn, and each turn after. The Froghemoth's gullet can hold up to 2 creatures at a time, and if the Froghemoth takes 20 damage on a single turn from inside it, the Froghemoth must succeed on a DC 20 Constitution saving throw at the end of that turn or regurgitate all swallowed creatures. Bear in mind though that it's got +9 to its Constitution saving throw, so that's deceptive, that DC. Each of the victims then falls prone in a space within 10 feet of the Froghemoth as they're regurgitated out. If the Froghemoth dies, the swallowed creature is no longer restrained by it and can escape from the corpse using 10 feet of movement, slithering out through its gullet, exiting prone. Keep in mind that the Froghemoth really doesn't like getting hit with lightning damage. It will automatically drop any grappled victims and concentrate all its attacks on whatever just used electricity against it. They are not that fast, moving only 30 feet per round normally, so halving their speed and number of attacks really messes them up. If the beast takes a lot of damage really quickly, and if an opponent especially is using electricity attacks against it, it will retreat into the water, but with an intelligence of only 2, it will forget to drop any opponents it is already grappling, so there's a reasonably severe risk of characters actually drowning to death in the bottom of the lake, or swamp, or mud pool the monster calls home. Because of the size and strength of the Froghemoth, it really doesn't slow down even while carrying a small team of medium-sized humanoids. Also, if there happens to be something like a wooden door or a wall between it and its prey, that structure is going to get explosively dismantled extremely quickly. So diving under a cart or inside a building is not going to confuse the Froghemoth if it's already aware of the target and tracking them for a tentacle or tongue strike. And they're not smart enough to use that tongue to target a large weapon and rip it out of a target's hands. So, yeah, but they are there's lots of magical means for making creatures smarter in Dungeons and Dragons. So if somebody manages to awaken one of these things, oh, heaven help us. Just saying. Other swamp and lake dwelling creatures that live around the Froghemoth are in awe of the power and ferocity of the Froghemoth. Volo's guide specifically mentions that if a bullywug tribe comes across a Froghemoth, the bullywugs treat the Froghemoth as a god and do all they can to coax the monster into their den where they can worship it. Froghemoth can be tamed after a fashion by offering copious amounts of food, and any bullywugs can communicate with it on a basic level, so the creature might just eat a few of the bullywugs before following the rest. Bullywugs gather food as a tribute for it, and the ferocity of bullywugs trying to find food for a hungry Froghemoth that's going to eat them instead if they don't manage it. Yeah. Providing it with a comfortable lair means providing it with a plentiful food train of victims, and they fanatically protect it from harm as well and try to ensure that any young Froghemoth reaches maturity, so very quickly you can get the bullywugs getting an out-of-control population of Froghemoths, which nobody wants. Lizard folk can also make use of the monster in this way, and creatures like Kotoa may really believe that the Froghemoth is their god, and with the scary effect of actually providing the monster with some sort of crazy divine power that they've invested into it. This is what you could certainly consider elevating them to a legendary monster with some form of intelligence, perhaps even able to talk, if you wanted to. Volo seems aware that Froghemoths are not creatures native to the natural world. He says that there is a journal written long ago by Lum the Mad, describing strange cylindrical metal chambers buried in the ground and that the first Froghemoths emerged from, though he has no idea where that location was. What is interesting is that Lum the Mad was a wizard native to the Greyhawk setting and the world of Earth. Who knows how they managed to get to the world of Toril and the Forgotten Realm setting. Probably elves, weirdo lake elves or something, or wizards. It's always wizards, or maybe warlocks. Please hit the like button if you made it this far. Subscribe if you like what I do. Check out my Subscribestar or Patreon for all the full scripts for these videos. Buy some Teespring merchandise. Wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.